My name is Leah, and just last month, I turned 32. But 3 years ago, my life shattered in a single evening that I'll never forget. It happened during what was supposed to be a quiet family dinner. My mother suddenly slammed her fist on the table, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. Then, with a cold calmness that froze me in place, she looked right into my eyes and said, "You're a disappointment, Leah, a total failure." Before I could speak, she added something that made my stomach twist. She was giving our entire $500,000 family house to my sister as a wedding gift. "At least one of my daughters knows how not to waste her life," she said, handing over the property deed while the rest of the family clapped. I remember standing there, numb, the laughter around me turning into a dull roar. I left the table, grabbed my car keys, and drove straight to my Aunt Laurie's house, hoping for comfort. But when she opened the door, her face was just as hard. "You always chase childish dreams, Leah. You're on your own this time." Then she shut the door in my face. That night, under the cold streetlight, I made a decision. I blocked every family contact on my phone, deleted their numbers, and promised myself I would never beg again. For 3 long years, I stayed silent. No calls, no visits, nothing. Until last week, when fate brought my past straight to my doorstep. My sister Lisa happened to drive by my new home, a sleek, modern villa perched on the outskirts of Greenwich. She stopped her car, staring at the property in disbelief. The large solar panels glittering on the roof must have been the last thing she expected to see. Her voice trembled when she called my mother. "Mom, you won't believe this. The house. It's hers." What came next, I never saw coming. Before I tell you how I built everything they once mocked, how I turned my silly little dream into a business worth millions, hit that like and subscribe button if you believe that sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. Because my story isn't about luck. It's about how losing everything became my greatest freedom. Growing up in Greenwich, an elegant suburb just outside New York City, my family looked picture perfect from the outside. The 2-story colonial house, the manicured lawn, the imported cars parked in our 3-car garage. But behind that facade of wealth was a family divided by one simple truth. My mother only loved success, not people. Mom, Leslie Moore, was a socialite who thrived on country club brunches, charity luncheons, and whispers about who had the biggest house or the newest car. For her, life was about status, not substance, and she found her pride and joy early. Not in me, but in my older sister, Lisa. Lisa fit Mom's mold perfectly. Even as a child, she mimicked adult confidence, talking about investments and portfolios as if she were born for Wall Street. Mom hired her a private tutor to teach her finance before she was even 10. When Lisa's mock stock charts looked impressive, Mom pinned them on the refrigerator like priceless art. "My daughter's going places," she'd beam. Meanwhile, I was the family's quiet disappointment, the girl who preferred coding renewable energy apps to socializing. At 10, I built my first simple program that tracked solar panel output, something my dad proudly called the future. But when Mum saw it, she sighed. "You waste too much time on nonsense, Leah. No one makes a living playing with computers." My aunt, Laurie Mitchell, was even blunter. Married into money and obsessed with appearances, she'd scoff every time I mentioned my projects. "Sweetheart, those little gadgets won't pay your bills. Be more like Lisa. Practical." The only one who saw me, truly saw me, was my dad, Zachary Moore, a quiet software engineer who had sacrificed his dream career to move into finance for Mom's sake. In the evenings, when everyone else was asleep, he'd sit beside me in his home office, showing me how algorithms could power entire cities. "You're building the future, Leah," he'd whisper. sliding me a new laptop on my 11th birthday. Don't let them make you doubt it. For my sister's 16th birthday, Mom threw a lavish backyard party complete with caterers and a brand new sports car wrapped in a bow. Neighbors clapped, cameras flashed. My 16th, a small dinner with Dad. He handed me a refurbished laptop and said softly, "This will take your code further." I smiled, grateful, even as the difference stung. But I didn't know that night, sitting there in our quiet dining room, that this tiny spark of resilience would one day turn into the fire that changed everything. By the time I turned 17, my life had become a tug of war between encouragement and contempt. Dad remained my quiet anchor, patient, steady, and endlessly fascinated by my coding projects. Every line of code felt like a conversation with him, a shared secret world that Mom and Aunt Laurie could never understand. That spring, my solar tracking app won first place in the statewide tech innovation contest. My picture even appeared on the front page of the Greenwich Times. Dad was ecstatic, clipping the article and framing it for his office. He kept telling anyone who'd listen, "She's solving real problems. The world just hasn't caught up yet." Mom barely looked up from her tablet. "It's just a school project," she muttered, while Aunt Laurie laughed outright. "Apps won't buy you a house, Leah. You need a real career." Their voices stung, but Dad's faith dulled the pain. Then came the night that split my world in two. 3 weeks before high school graduation, Dad was driving home from a late client meeting when a truck ran a red light. The police said it was instantaneous. No pain, no chance to say goodbye. I was 17, clutching the police report with trembling hands, my ears ringing as my mother's tears shifted too quickly into frustration about funeral arrangements and press appearances. At the funeral, Lisa stood beside Mom, comforting her like the perfect daughter, while I felt invisible. The one person who truly believed in me was gone. After Dad's death, the house felt colder. His office door stayed shut, the framed newspaper article quietly gathering dust. Mom poured her energy into Lisa's college applications, arranging interviews and dinner meetings with alumni. Aunt Laurie visited often, always bringing news of Lisa's upcoming scholarship interviews and hedge fund internships. When I mentioned my acceptance into the University of Connecticut's computer science program, Mom just nodded. "You'll need to cover your own expenses, Leah. We've already committed a lot to Lisa's education." And that was that. I packed Dad's old laptop, a few books, and moved into a small dorm on campus. To pay for rent and tuition, I took freelance coding jobs, tiny projects for local businesses, debugging websites for coffee money. My days blurred into long hours of classes and longer nights of work. Still, every time I wrote a clean line of code, I felt him beside me, whispering, "Keep going, kiddo." I didn't know it then, but that whisper was the only thing that would keep me grounded when my mother's betrayal reached its cruelest point. Graduation came and went quietly. I didn't expect my mother or Lisa to show up, but a small part of me still hoped they would. Of course they didn't. Mom sent a short text. "Congrats. Focus on something real now." I stared at it for a minute, then deleted it. After college, I landed an internship at Urban Energy, a small nonprofit in New York City, focused on sustainable technology. It wasn't glamorous, and it definitely wasn't well paid, but it was meaningful. I was finally doing something that mattered, improving the efficiency of real-world solar grids. Meanwhile, Lisa had secured a junior analyst role at a Manhattan hedge fund. Her engagement to Austin Hayes, a young banker from a wealthy family, made her the talk of every Greenwich social circle. Mom and Aunt Laurie couldn't stop bragging. "Lisa's going to marry into the elite," Laurie gushed during one of her weekly brunches. "You must be so proud, Leslie. I wasn't invited to that brunch," or the engagement dinner that followed. But a last-minute message came from Lisa herself. "You can come if you want. Dress appropriately." Against my better judgment, I went. The house looked exactly as I'd remembered. Elegant, spotless, lifeless. The backyard shimmered with string lights. Violins played, and guests in designer suits laughed over champagne. I slipped in quietly, hoping to blend into the background. But fate didn't let me hide for long. In the kitchen, I overheard my mother's voice. Cold, sharp. "She's a failure. Wasting her life on those silly apps," she said to one of the guests. "Lisa deserves the house. She's earned it." My blood ran cold. Mom stepped out moments later, holding the deed to our family home. "To my successful daughter Lisa," she announced to the room. Her smile, wide as applause, filled the air. My sister beamed, holding the papers like a trophy. I felt the air leave my lungs. Everything inside me wanted to scream. But instead, I stood still, heart pounding. Then I finally spoke. "You're giving her the house." My voice trembled. "You called me your daughter too." Mom's expression hardened. "You've done nothing with your life, Leah. Get out if you can't respect my decision." The crowd fell silent. Lisa smirked. Austin looked away. I walked out without another word, tears burning my eyes. I drove to Aunt Laurie's home, hoping, foolishly, that she'd let me stay the night. But she just crossed her arms at the door. "You're useless, Leah. Always have been. Figure it out yourself." That was the last time I saw either of them. That night, sitting alone in my car, I decided something. If they thought I was a failure, I'd make sure the world proved them wrong. That night in the car outside my aunt's mansion, I sat shaking, drenched in a mix of tears and determination. I had no family, no money, and no one left to call. But in the silence of that parking lot, one thought burned through the chaos. They could take everything from me, except my mind. The next morning, I signed the lease on a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, barely big enough for a desk and a mattress. The radiator hissed through the nights. The walls cracked, but it was mine. I worked 18-hour days at Urban Energy, coding until dawn and surviving on instant coffee. Every keystroke became an act of defiance. Every bug fixed felt like reclaiming a piece of my worth. My small prototype, an app that synced solar panels with city weather data, started drawing attention. It reduced urban power waste by nearly 25%, something even large companies struggled to achieve. During a sustainability conference in Manhattan, I ran into my old mentor, Professor Melinda Jenkins. She studied my new model and whispered, "Leah, this could change how cities use energy." She introduced me to Justin Patel, a venture capitalist who specialized in green startups. Over coffee, he grilled me about scaling, market entry, and profit models. I was terrified but confident. When I finished my pitch, he smiled and said, "You've built something real." 2 months later, I signed my first investment deal, $75,000 for 20% equity in my new company, Green Tech Solutions. I hired a fellow engineer, Misty Ramirez, to strengthen the back-end systems, and together, we coded through sleepless nights in a co-working space filled with the hum of other dreamers. Within 6 months, we landed a pilot contract with a regional grocery chain to automate lighting and climate control across 10 stores. The results were staggering. A 30% reduction in energy bills. Local business media picked up the story, calling Green Tech a small company with a big solution. Inquiries poured in from across the East Coast. While my mother flaunted Lisa's Manhattan condo and diamond engagement ring, I quietly built a growing empire from a single laptop. By the end of our first year, Green Tech was profitable. I moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment, still small, but bright and peaceful. Sometimes when exhaustion hit, I'd imagine Dad sitting beside me, nodding in quiet pride. You're doing it, kiddo. Every rejection, every insult, every slam door had led here. To a company born from pain, but built on purpose. And I wasn't even close to finished. 3 years passed faster than I could have imagined. GreenTech Solutions was no longer a startup. It was a growing force in sustainable innovation. Our app powered dozens of commercial buildings across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, cutting their energy waste by record-breaking margins. I had 16 employees, a real office, and investors who finally saw the potential I'd been fighting for all along. With our success, I finally left the cramped Brooklyn studio and moved into a modern villa in Greenwich. Quiet, minimalist, and completely powered by the same solar grid technology I had built from scratch. Every light, every hum of power in that house ran on my own code. It was more than a home. It was proof that I had turned their mockery into something unshakable. Then, one bright October afternoon, fate decided to close the circle. My sister Lisa and her husband were driving back from visiting his parents when she spotted the GreenTech logo on a discreet sign near my driveway. She stopped the car, eyes wide, mouth open. "Wait, this can't be hers," she whispered, staring at the glass facade of my house. Within minutes, Mom was on the phone, her voice trembling. "You're joking, right? Leah owns that place." That evening, I heard the doorbell. Standing there was Leslie Moore, my mother. Older, smaller somehow, her usual confidence dimmed. "Leah," she said softly, "I didn't realize how far you'd come. I was wrong to—" I didn't let her finish. My voice was steady, calm, nothing like the trembling girl she once broke. "You didn't believe in me when it mattered. I built this without you, and I'll keep building without your approval." Her eyes glistened, but I didn't waver. I closed the door gently, the click echoing like a full stop at the end of a long, painful sentence. Later that week, Aunt Laurie texted me, "Still wasting your time with tech toys, I see. Lisa was the one meant for greatness." I didn't even reply, just blocked her number. That silence was the sweetest victory I'd ever known. Months later, news reached me through my old friend Pamela. Mom's reputation had collapsed. Greenwich's elite found out about her favoritism, how she disowned one daughter to favor the other. Her country club invitations vanished. Gossip spread like wildfire. Her empire of appearances crumbled. Lisa's world fell apart next. Her marriage ended, her career tanked, and reckless real estate investments drove her into bankruptcy. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just watched the sunset from my rooftop as my solar panels shifted toward the fading light. Symbols of balance, of energy reclaimed. My story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming power, the kind that no one can give or take away. The day I closed the door on my mother was the day I truly stepped into my own light. No audience, no applause, just silence, the kind that feels like peace. GreenTech Solutions continued to expand, growing from a single idea into a multi-state operation. Our systems powered retail stores, schools, and community centers, cutting costs, saving energy, and making cities a little greener each day. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing validation. I was creating impact. When the company turned 3 years old, we signed our biggest deal yet, a partnership with the state of Maryland to implement our energy optimization systems in over 100 government buildings. Reporters called it a revolution in urban sustainability. I called it the legacy of a quiet coder who refused to quit. Pamela, my old college friend, often dropped by the villa. One evening, as we shared coffee on the rooftop terrace, she gave me an update I didn't ask for. "Your mom doesn't go to the club anymore," she said gently. Most of her old friends avoid her. And Lisa, she's moved back into an apartment downtown. Alone, I listened in silence. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even smug. I just felt distant. The pain that once ruled my heart had faded into perspective. Their downfall wasn't my victory. My peace was, I never reached out. Some chapters don't deserve sequels. Instead, I focused on building what Dad had always envisioned, a future that ran on innovation and empathy. I launched a mentorship program for young women in tech, especially those told they weren't practical enough for success. Every time I saw their eyes light up as they solved a problem or launched their first project, I saw a reflection of my younger self, the girl no one believed in, and every time I powered up a new solar grid, I thought of him. Follow your heart, Leah. Don't chase money like I did. Now my mornings begin with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the panels adjusting automatically to the angle of the dawn. The entire house hums on clean, self-generated power, the light I built myself. Sometimes standing on that rooftop, I look out over Greenwich, the town that once defined my pain, and now sits quietly beneath my triumph. I think about how different everything could have been if I'd let bitterness lead me. But I didn't. I turned rejection into resilience and silence into strength. Because the real revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. And as the sun rises over my home, I know I've done just that. Thank you for watching Leah's story. A journey from rejection to rebirth, from failure to freedom. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of hidden strength, quiet revenge, and the light you build yourself.